Hello and welcome everybody to the Shutdown Stakes, Fighting Trump's Healthcare Cuts and Chaos, hosted by the Progressive Caucus Action Fund, Groundwork Action, Indivisible, and Public Citizen. My name is Catherine Rowland, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Access at the Progressive Caucus Action Fund, and I will be moderating today's conversation. As we get started, please introduce yourself in the chat. We would love to hear your name, your pronouns, and any affiliation you may have, and where you are joining us from. We are here to talk about the stakes of the ongoing government shutdown. American families have endured months of chaos as the Trump administration has stolen billions in federal funds meant for communities, hospitals, schools, veterans, disaster aid, and much more. And now, on top of that, families' finances are about to take a massive hit when health insurance premiums skyrocket thanks to Republican inaction. 22 million Americans are expected to see their annual healthcare costs go up by more than $1,000. And between these cost hikes and this summer's GOP budget law, 15 million Americans are expected to lose their insurance altogether. Rather than deal with these crises and bring down Americans' costs, Republicans in Congress have shut down the federal government. This briefing is going to walk through how the chaos of the last 9 months led to this moment and what is at stake for working families now that we are here. To kick us off, it is my honor to introduce our special guest, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut's 3rd District. She serves as the ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, the top Democrat on the committee that oversees government funding. Every day, Congresswoman DeLauro fights for legislation that would give all working families the opportunity to succeed. And today, she's going to tell us how the Trump administration's lawlessness brought us to a government shutdown and what comes next. Congresswoman DeLauro, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm delighted and honored to be here with you. I see my colleague, Greg Casar, is on as well. But I want to say a thank you to you, Catherine, for your introduction, but to Groundwork Action, Indivisible, Public Citizen, the Progressive Caucus Action Fund. This is an important discussion, and thank you for hosting. I just want to say to everybody who is aboard, thanks for being here, but really it's about your engagement. It's about being in the fight with all of us on this, which is so critically important as we move forward. Just an aside, when I and several of my colleagues first founded the Progressive Caucus, we did so because what we wanted to do is to make sure the Democratic Party was prioritizing the needs of working class, middle class, vulnerable Americans. And we saw it as our duty then, and obviously we still do now, because to use our privileges of influence to fight for folks who have been forgotten, overlooked, or left behind. That's what our job is. So it's true today. That's what we're fighting for now. And that's what the crux of what this battle is all about today. You pointed out, Catherine, end of this year, 20 million Americans are going to see their health insurance premiums skyrocket unless Congress takes action to do something about it. And I always put this in the context. We're looking today at families, millions of honest, hard-working families doing everything that they can to make ends meet amidst a national cost of living crisis. And people live paycheck to paycheck today. This is not just a throwaway line, it's a reality. People are struggling to pay with the high cost of living. They struggle with grocery bills. They struggle with electricity costs, housing, either renting an apartment or dealing with trying to buy a home. At the top of that list of costs, and they also, have difficulty putting food on the table today. In my district, 1 out of 7 families, this is Connecticut, statistically the richest state in the nation. 1 out of 7 people in my district don't know where their next meal is coming from. This is a serious issue. But the biggest cost driver today on that cost of living cycle is healthcare costs. It really is overwhelming to people. And what's going to happen? First of all, in October, the middle of this month in Connecticut, there's going to be a notice that goes out from the providers telling people that in Connecticut, there's a 16.8, almost 17% increase in their premium. and their insurance, etc. That is without the ending of the premium subsidies. So the monthly health insurance payments could double. That is a prohibitive cost for far too many Americans. And they're going to have to make their first payment right before the holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever it is, by December 15th. If you want to have coverage by January 1st, then you've got to make that payment. The Speaker of the House says, well, this is a December policy issue. Plenty of time to address the subsidies. Hell no. It's a lie. The issue is now that we should be dealing with it and discussing it. Look, I could go chapter and verse. I don't have it time. I can tell you what a family in Milford, Connecticut. You got a family with with one child, etc., with a certain income level. Their premium is going to go up over $10,000. Somebody in Hamden, Connecticut. 80 people making $85,000. They're paying $7,000 now, which is very costly, but it's going to go up to $24,000. I'm not making up the numbers. This is the Kaiser Family Foundation who's given us all these numbers, and each of us in our own district have these numbers. Our budget committee put out a document that said, this is how much in your district the premium is going up. This is how many people are going to be jettisoned. So there's a reality, and that reality is now, which is why we're pressing to deal with it now. So access to quality, affordable healthcare is one of the most basic necessities for modern society. And you can't force people to choose between paying for their kids' medication or putting food on the table or paying their rent. But it's the reality, again, and you said this, Catherine, 15 million more Americans are going to face under the Republican plan. We're adamant. Yes, we are adamant about protecting access to care to prevent the cost from going up even higher. And Democrats have been more than willing to sit down and figure out how to negotiate this compromise in terms of funding the government. I will just tell you for a second that just maybe 4 weeks ago at the most, the people who are head up the Appropriations Committee, Tom Cole and myself on the House side, Patty Murray, Susan Collins on the Republican side, we gathered. This is the Four Corners gathering. We talked about what we needed to try to proceed ahead with appropriations. We talked about the three bills, agricultural ledge branch, Milcon, and what we needed were top lines for that, be able to move on that. We got those top line numbers, and that process moves along. The second thing we said as Democrats, that whatever was coming down in a continuing resolution had to include Democratic priorities, because all the bills we've seen on the House side and the Appropriations Committee have been partisan bills, unilaterally partisan, no consideration of any Democratic considerations. So protect Democratic priorities, and also that when Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate get together and determine how federal dollars are going to be spent, no unelected bureaucrat like Russ Vought should come in and say, no, that's not the case, or the President of the United States. That's not the case. We're going to use it for something else. So that is what we agreed to. We had a consensus on that. Lo and behold, it comes to the continuing resolution. Boom. This is thrown on the table. President says, there's no point talking to Jeffries and Schumer, it's a waste of time. And he further says, admonishing Republicans, let's take this Republican continuing resolution and jam it down the throats of the Democrats. Hell, there is nothing trustworthy about that, or wanting to really truly engage in a bipartisan effort. So Democrats are more than willing to fund the government. Along with Patty Murray we introduced an alternative. And very simply speaking, our alternative went to keep the government funded through October 31st, avert the Republican shutdown, allow for bipartisan negotiations to occur, and address the healthcare crisis, reverse the devastating Medicaid cut that they do and the attacks on the Affordable Care Act, prevent healthcare premiums from skyrocketing at the end of the year with the subsidies, and yes, to have a mechanism that in fact does not allow them to continue to steal taxpayers' money. That is what it was all about. And so and ready, willing, and able to sit down and talk anytime, any place, anywhere. They have refused. The first meeting that the president set up, he canceled because Johnson and Thune said, don't do it. The second one he has is a day before we're about to see the end of the fiscal year. He decides to meet, and, what was the timeline for getting anything done? None. The Speaker of the House says, let's cancel the session. Let's cancel this week. Why? What they want to do is to try to put pressure on the Senate to cave to their continuing resolution. That has not worked so far, and it's my hope that we can continue to do that. And there are a number of people who could be called to ask them to stay the course so that we are on target. At some point, when you have a negotiation, you have to have a willing partner on the other side. We don't have a willing partner. Thune says there's nothing to talk about. Johnson says the issues are extraneous. The healthcare of the American people is not an extraneous matter. So, Republicans are dead set, really, on making working class people, middle class, the vulnerable pay for their tax cuts for the billionaires that they have taken care of. $4.5 trillion to the wealthiest, to the billionaires and the biggest corporations. They chose to shut the government down rather than to strike a deal with us. And isn't it interesting? The $4.5 trillion is permanent. What we need is $1.5 trillion for the extension of the subsidies. They say we can't do that. 4.5 is okay, but that's because it's for their friends. The shutdown began less than a week ago, but the crisis, again, as you pointed out, Catherine, it's been months in the making. We have a timeline that we put together for appropriations. If you haven't seen it, we'll send it out to of all the actions they've taken over the last several months. It's the president and budget director Russ Vought have orchestrated a meticulous and concerted effort to dismantle the core functions of government since the very first day in office. Russ Vought would like to see the government shut down. Donald Trump knows nothing about appropriations. He knows nothing about the budget. So the person calling the shots is Russell Vought. And I'm glad to begin to see that he is now above the radar, and he ought to be a poster child, because what he wants to do is to grab all of that power for himself. They want to avoid Congress, avoid an appropriations process, and make a determination of where those dollars go and to whom they should go, to their friends. That's what they want to take care of. Look, first things that the president did being sworn in illegally, unilaterally freezing billions of dollars in federal funds, cut off support for cancer research, nutrition assistance, housing security, programs like Head Start. Together with Russ Vought, they freeze, they steal. It's now about $410 billion in lawfully approved funding that was meant to support our communities. And that total grows by the day. In August, the president and Russ Vought attempted to really, again, we're thinking about trying to get to a continuing resolution. They come forward with a power grab to seal $5 billion in foreign assistance, simply ignoring the law and continuing to illegally freeze funds until they can no longer be used. That's the pocket rescission. Nobody should talk about a pocket rescission. It is stealing the funds from the American people. I fought against that corruption because it's illegal. And it's not me not just me saying so. The Government Accountability Office, crystal clear on this point over and over and over again. Though Russ Vought won a temporary reprieve for his corruption in the courts, but we're not going to stop fighting. We have to use the courts because the courts are our friend. A week ago, Russ Vought announced he was blocking another, not $18 billion, critical infrastructure funds for New York City. It wasn't a shutdown that premised this. He said DEI. DEI was the reason for cutting off the money for the Hudson Tunnel and the 2nd Avenue subway. That's jobs. It's unbelievable. So now you've got $8 billion in clean energy projects. They're primarily in blue states. It's $53 million in cuts to these programs in Connecticut. $2 billion in public transit funding for the city of Chicago now. So these are, my view, corrupt abuses of power. It not only hurts Democrats, they have real life consequences. Jobs lost, increased energy costs, inadequate infrastructure, just to name a few. Cost of living again. This is the president that says he's going to bring down the cost of living on day one. What the hell? It's increased since the time he has been there. So the consequences hurt communities across the political spectrum, and they have been doing this all year long. So here we are, after months of attacks on the federal workforce, of illegally withholding congressionally approved funds, of shuttering agencies and terminating projects. Now they have finally decided to simply shut it all down rather than negotiate with Democrats to prevent healthcare costs from becoming radically more expensive for millions of Americans. So look, I want to just say to you, the next time you hear someone try to lay the shutdown at the Democrats' feet, just remind them of how we got there, how we got here. Remind them that when the government was fully funded, President Trump and Russ Vought were doing everything in their power, routinely going beyond their legal authority. They have no legal authority. Power of the purse is vested in the Congress. It has been opined by the Supreme Court in Antonin Scalia, Kavanaugh. Scalia, not a liberal torch burner. So over and over again, they have been rebuked on this effort. And they go after parts of government that they personally do not like. You have to remind them that Russ Vought has defunded the nonpartisan watchdogs that are supposed to hold him and the president accountable. That's the inspectors general. And he is not subject to an inspector general himself. Remind them that congressional Republicans had no problem with that then. Remind them that unless we act now, monthly healthcare costs will double for millions of families all across this country. And you need to remind them that every step of the way, it has been the Democrats who have been fighting to lower the costs, stop the cuts, and save healthcare. We need your help. We need your help. Today, I met with labor groups. I met with the disability community. I'm meeting with providers tomorrow. I met with interfaith groups by Zoom last Friday. We have three pillars to rest on. One is the courts, and the courts, as I said, are our friends. And while we can't sue, we can file amicus briefs. We can work with organizations that are suing. And that's working, except it does take time. And, if they go to the Supreme Court, and we have to be wary of the Supreme Court. The second is legislation. Legislation is great, but we're in the minority. And, we're in the minority. We can't win. But we'll make the public fights about these issues, and we'll continue to do that. But the third is the most powerful, and that is public outcry. Public outcry. The Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. You all are that external pressure. The groups I've been speaking to since I got back home on Friday are the external pressure. We have to stand up and fight back. This is a moment. This is not a moment to get scared. This is not a moment to get cowed by the other side. And it's not a moment. The House stands united in these efforts behind Hakeem Jeffries. The Senate has been there. I want them to continue to be there. And you need to be in touch with the senators that you know to say, stay the course. Don't move. Just with this last thing, I've been home the last several days all over the place. Wherever I run into people, no one is talking to me about a political issue, not about a specific policy issue. You know what they're all saying to me? Whether there are guards at the door, whether there are people on the train, whether they're, teachers, whatever it is, fight back. Stay the course. Keep standing up. We had a call in our office today from a federal worker. He says, I'm being furloughed. He says, but I don't want you to back down. I don't want you to back down. We need you, and we need your strength working together with us to win this battle. And I believe that we can win this battle. I'm not Pollyanna. I understand how hard it is, but it can be done. We can back them off, but it only comes with the outrage of the public are moving that along and organizing to get it done. So thank you, and keep up the great work that you do. Proud to be associated with you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I really appreciate your taking the time to be here and for your passion on this. And now I am honored to introduce our other special guest, Congressman Greg Casar of Texas 35th District. Congressman Casar serves as the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He is a labor organizer and the son of Mexican immigrants, and he is fighting to raise the wages for millions of American workers, expand immigrant rights, restore abortion rights and voting rights, protect veterans and seniors, and tackle the climate crisis. Congressman, would love to hear your perspective. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much to our friends at the Progressive Caucus Center and the Action Fund. Thank you to my friend, ranking member DeLauro, public citizen, SEIU, Groundwork, and everybody working so hard to make sure that the American people know that we have your backs, that we're out there fighting for your health care and for your democracy right now. I just heard from a constituent named Eric who is worried on behalf of himself and his own family, but everybody else that relies on Medicaid to manage his chronic illness. He is surviving with muscular dystrophy, but without Medicaid, he couldn't afford his life to be able to take care of himself and his family and to be able to be a full participant in our community. And right now, folks like Senator Ted Cruz are refusing to hear voices of their own constituents like Eric. Millions of people who could lose their Medicaid, millions more who will have their health care costs skyrocket in a way they cannot afford. And we know your health care and your budget are not just little policy issues. They are people's entire lives. And since folks like Ted Cruz refuse to listen to their own constituents, I showed up in his San Antonio office with many of his constituents who care about healthcare to deliver the message, to deliver a letter. And of course, they were nowhere to be found. And we know that the American people are trying to see who are the politicians that are willing to stand up for them. Is the Democratic Party really willing to fight? And I think right now we're starting to see the beginnings of a Democratic Party that is standing up to the billionaire class and saying, no, you can't just take away our health care. Standing up to the billionaire class and saying, you can't just take away the money that is supposed to care for us and just go give it out to your friends and to your donors, to say hell no to that. And as ranking member DeLauro said, if we stay in that fight, united with the American people, we can win. And then once we win that fight, then we can go and make sure that we say that those billionaires can't auction off our First Amendment rights, that those billionaires can't go and take our money and spend it on a completely rogue agency and ICE to separate our families. That while federal agencies get shut down, Donald Trump shouldn't be able to get a gold-plated ballroom. That we care about our Constitution and our basic rights and the things that we can do together as a community if the many actually get a say in our democracy instead of just Donald Trump and his corrupt friends. So I'm so thankful to everybody who is in the fight, because the stakes could not be higher, where Republicans clearly want to continue to have government agencies shut down the government. They would rather do all of that rather than just lower costs for everyday Americans. And I think we can stand very strong in our position that we want an open government and for your health care costs to come down. And I think we could vote for that position every single day of the week. Thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Congressman Casar and Congresswoman DeLauro, again, for being with us. In just a moment, we're going to hear from other leading voices that are fighting to protect Americans' healthcare and bring an end to the chaos and the cuts. First, we have some brief housekeeping notes that my colleague is going to put in the chat for folks' reference. And also, if you are joining us from a social media live stream, be sure to take a moment and register yourself for this briefing. You should see a link on your screen shortly, and that will make sure you receive our follow-up materials. We will repeat that message at the end in case you missed the link. With that, I'd like to get started. I want to turn first to Ezra Levin, the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, along with his co-founder and spouse, Leah Greenberg. Ezra has been featured as one of Time 100's most influential people of 2019, included on GQ's 50 most powerful people in Trump's Washington, and ranked number 2 on Politico's 50's top list of thinkers, doers, and visionaries transforming American politics. Ezra, thank you for being with us. As we've said already, Americans are dealing with rising costs and billions in federal resources that have been taken from their communities, and we will talk more about that shortly. But on top of all of this, families are starting to get notices from their health insurers about significantly higher premiums for that same coverage starting next year. And I know Congresswoman DeLauro mentioned a couple of stories about that. Can you walk us through, for folks who don't know, why this is happening?
Yeah, there are really, I think, two questions here. Why is it that the Republicans are doing what they're doing, and why is it that the Democrats now are doing what they're doing? And I think we heard from DeLauro and Congressman Greg Casar that the basic answer to why Republicans are doing what they're doing, which is Donald Trump would like a golden bathroom and ballroom, and he would like everybody else to pay for it by cutting their health insurance. That's not a new position of the Republican Party. It is built on the idea that billionaires and donors should get tax cuts and everybody else should have their health care and services cut. That's the foundation of the modern Republican Party. It's not a particular surprise that this Republican Party is making a condition for funding the government more cuts to healthcare, higher premiums for Americans, and cutting Medicaid so that rural hospitals have to go out of business. That's what they do. But we're seeing a shift now because 6 months ago, the Republicans demanded that, and Senate Democrats gave in and gave it to them. 6 months ago, they successfully cut health care in order to help their donors. But now we're seeing something different. And I think it's a good question. Why are we seeing this now? Democrats are unified and fighting back in the House and in the Senate. Every stripe of Democrat, the progressives are leading the charge, but the centrists are there too. The establishment Democrats are there too. Leadership is there too. There is a unified opposition party now in a way we haven't seen in the 11 months since the election. And we're seeing it now, not because it just magically occurred. We're seeing it now because people all over the country are pissed off and they're letting their representatives and senators know that they want to see them fight back. And it's working. After the Democrats worked with Republicans to pass the CR 6 months ago, we saw hands off 3 million people all over the country saying, do not cut our services. Then we saw May Day. Then we saw No Kings in June. Then we saw the John Lewis Day of Remembrance in July. Then we saw Labor Day. And we've got in 2 weeks a protest event with No Kings 2 on October 18th that promises to be the largest peaceful protest in modern American history. What our elected officials are hearing is you got to fight back against this regime. And you know what they're doing? They're now fighting back. So the reason why we're where we are now is both because Republicans are doing what Republicans do. They're trying to cut our healthcare. They're trying to raise our costs. But Democrats are now doing what the grassroots and rank and file Democrats are asking them to do, which is fight back against that. So I am encouraged that we have a unified opposition party right now. We have been pushing for this for months and months and months. And I think all of us on the outside who aren't elected officials now have a role to play. If at any point over the last 11 months you said, gosh, why aren't Dems fighting back hard enough? Why aren't they picking the fights that they can win? Why aren't they digging in? Now they are. And it's all of our responsibility to back them up. And so we see Indivisible groups and other folks all around the country doing that in rapid response fashion. And the cavalry's coming in just a couple weeks. Democrats hold out that long.
Thank you so much for that, Ezra. And you actually answered one of my next questions about what you're hearing from folks on the ground about what they want to see from the representatives. So I'll just ask you, why is now the moment to be talking about this? Why are we talking about insurance premiums for next year? What does that have to do with the government shutdown? Why does this fight have to happen now?
I mean, this fight has to happen now because the Republicans picked it now. They are the ones who've dug in their heels. Democrats are not demanding anything other than an end to the suffering the Republicans are causing. To not dig in now would mean giving in to what Republicans are doing to Americans all across the country. Blue states, red states, purple states, city centers, rural areas, suburban areas. They are raising costs for all Americans if Democrats let them. What Democrats are proposing right now is one of the most popular things that I've ever seen polled. It is not a Democratic proposal to extend the ACA tax credits to prevent cuts from going through on Medicaid and ensure that this regime does not have a blank check. This is a proposal that is supported by independents. It's supported by non-MAGA Republicans. 57% of MAGA Republicans support extending the ACA tax credits. This is a no-brainer issue, and the idea that the Republicans are going to continue shutting down the government in order to raise the cost of healthcare, a thing that is opposed by their own damn hardcore Republican MAGA voters, is bonkers. The reason why the fight is here now is because the Democratic Party is unified, is fighting back, and we can win it. But it's up to all of us, like I said. Do not just consume this information and feel good that you've now got folks who are fighting back. Play your part now. We had 76 events across 60 congressional districts and 27 states on Saturday, 2 days after we had a call telling people, drive calls, go and do events on Saturday. People listening to this right now, participate in your democracy. If you've got a Republican senator, call them and tell them to stop shutting down the government and actually go and negotiate with the Democrats. If you've got a Democratic senator who is not John Fetterman or Cortez Masto or Angus King, those three have caved. Every other Senate Democrat is fighting. Call them and let them know you appreciate it. Tell them you see that they've got a spine and they should stand up straight, and you're backing them up when they do it. We all have a role to play here, but time is of the essence. I know folks are going to show up in big numbers on October 18th. That's important, but we don't have until October 18th to make our voices heard. Now's the time. After this call, call your senator. After that, tell some friend, some colleague, some family member to call your senator and make plans to show up at their office, because that's really going to break through.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ezra. I want to turn now to Julia Tilley, a home care worker and member of United Home Care Workers of Pennsylvania, SEIU Healthcare Pennsylvania. Julia has been the full-time caregiver for her daughter Kay for about 10 years. Julia, thank you so much for being with us today and for being willing to share your story. As a home care worker, what does your everyday look like, and why do programs like Medicaid or premium tax credits to help people afford their insurance matter?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, I do take care of my adult daughter, and typically my day consists of preparing meals for her, light housekeeping, laundry, managing all of her medications. She's on 7 different medications a day. Taking her to her doctor's appointments, coordinating all her appointments, keeping track of all her other appointments with her providers, being her Uber a lot of the time, and also providing enrichment for her, getting her out in the community, going to the library, going to the movies, taking her to visit family and friends, going to the gym. I mean, basically, home care workers allow people with differing abilities to live with dignity in their own homes, in their own community. How these proposed cuts to Medicaid will impact her, all of my daughter's services are paid by Medicaid. So it's her health insurance, her prescription coverage, my home care hours are all funded through Medicaid. Her speech therapy, her case management, her peer support, her counseling and day programs, they are all funded through Medicaid. And any cuts or delays to Medicaid payments to providers will result in services being terminated, programs closing, and treatments being delayed. This isn't just going to affect my daughter, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. I am a mama bear when it comes to my kid, but this is going to impact so many other people. It is going to affect the more than 70 million people that have coverage through Medicaid. Breaking that down, that is 1 in 5 Americans depending on Medicaid in some way, shape, or form. 40% of them are children, and 70% are nursing home residents who could see their services cut or reduced because of these Medicaid cuts.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We've already heard a little bit about the risk that Americans' healthcare premiums will rise exponentially next year. And I understand this could impact your family. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that added expense would mean for you?
Yes. My husband and I, we've both been on Medicaid on and off over the years, but last year we were able to switch to Penny through the Affordable Care Act. And here in Pennsylvania, there's about 42,000 of us that are going to see our premiums at least double if these tax premiums go away. The average cost now in PA is around $460 a month. It's projected to go to at least $1,087 a month. Now, we haven't received the big bad letter yet, so I don't know what our increase is actually going to be. But such a huge leap for our family is going to be very devastating. I can't even imagine how we're going to pay for that. And then when I look at the projections for some of my other friends that have gotten the letters, it's scary. It is really, really, really scary. I mean, I've gone without healthcare in the past when I was much younger. I'm 60 now, and my husband's going to be 60 in December. Going without healthcare is just not an option for us. I mean, I have pre-existing conditions. My husband has a traumatic brain injury. We need healthcare. We deserve healthcare. We're the richest country in the world. We should be able to provide quality, affordable healthcare for everybody. And as somebody who works full time as I do, I should be able to afford healthcare. It's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. My last question for you, you're a member of United Home Care Workers of Pennsylvania, SEIU Healthcare Pennsylvania. SEIU is the biggest healthcare union in North America. What have you heard from your fellow healthcare workers about what they expect to happen if Congress fails to stop this massive cost increase?
Yeah. We've been having a lot of conversations. We just in Pennsylvania had our big leadership convention. So I was able to sit and talk with a lot of other home care providers. Yes, SEIU, we are the biggest healthcare union in North America. I am very, very proud to be a member. And collectively, we're scared, but more so we're angry. We're very, very angry. Many home care services are paid through Medicaid dollars. So cuts to Medicaid threatens our paychecks, as well as the health of our consumers. Because if the funding gets cut, then our consumers who rely on us to keep them in their homes, they're not going to be able to have workers come in. And so their health is going to deteriorate. People may be forced to move into institutions, which, by the way, it's cheaper for us to provide direct care in the home. It's a third cheaper for us to come in the home and provide the care rather than have somebody placed into an institution. But this administration doesn't seem to care about that. So not only is it going to threaten our paychecks, but it's going to potentially hurt our consumers. Here in Pennsylvania, we've also been without a budget, but we've been without a budget for 90 days. Nonprofits here in PA are already reporting that some home care workers are not being paid. So our members are afraid that they're going to be losing their jobs, or, in this really tight economy. That's not something anybody's looking forward to. And also that their consumers won't have staff. And again, that this will cause really irreprehensible harm to people, to human beings. And of course, the shutdown in DC is only making things worse. In addition, we as home care workers don't have medical benefits through our employer. Many of our members do go without health care. I've talked to some of those members when we were at our convention. Of those members that do have medical insurance, about 40% of them get their insurance through the Affordable Care Act. So eliminating those tax credits for the premiums to our health care will be devastating for a lot of us. Most of us are very underpaid. I only make $14 an hour. Interestingly enough, I just went online last night and I looked at the McDonald's website, and I can get a job at McDonald's starting at $15 an hour. I would have health, dental, and vision care, matching 401k, paid vacation, paid sick time, and tuition reimbursement. not to mention the free food, lots of fries. All of those things are things that I currently do not have working full time. And this does make me angry, primarily the healthcare issue. It is unfair and it is totally un-American. Everyone working full time should be able to afford good quality healthcare. As I said before, we're the richest country in the world, and this makes absolutely no sense to me. And I want to be really, really, really clear that these cuts are not about saving money. As some legislators have said, it's about putting more money in the pockets of billionaires. And yes, these cuts, if they happen, they're going to be hard. But we don't want our Democratic legislators to give away our health care just to give the 1% more tax cuts. We want the Democratic legislators to choose people over profit, to hold the line, to protect the poor and the working class. We need them to stand strong, and we will stand strong with them. That is all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julia, for being willing to share your story.
You're welcome.
I'll turn now to Lisa Gilbert, Public Citizens co-president. She founded and co-leads the Not Above the Law Coalition, designed to push back on the Trump administration's rule of law abuses. Lisa is a strong advocate for government transparency and integrity, financial reform, civil justice, and consumer protection. Lisa, earlier we talked about the billions of dollars in federal funding that the Trump administration has stolen from communities throughout this year. Can you talk practically about what that means? What funding are we talking about? What did the White House do with it? And what does it mean for communities to lose that funding?
Well, thanks so much, Kat. It is a really great question. As we've been discussing through this whole briefing, the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse, and nowhere does it give the president any unilateral power to impound, or in other words, steal the funds appropriated by Congress. Nevertheless, Donald Trump, Ross Fought, OMB director and architect of Project 2025, seem deeply confused about this, to put it kindly, and they keep attempting it, even as they are sued by us at Public Citizen and others for their blatantly illegal behavior. And as my friend Ezra of Indivisible and Representatives Casar and DeLauro said earlier, and as you asked, this behavior has real life consequences. Just a couple of examples. Illegal funding freezes have prevented over $25 billion in Department of Energy funding from being used to reduce utility costs and consumer prices through improvements to the electric grid and rebates that would have been paid directly to American households. In another example, they have frozen $15 billion in life-saving biomedical research. This hurts our chances in this country of new cures and treatments for cancer and Alzheimer's and ALS and diabetes, mental health issues, and on and on. For one more example, the administration blocked the payment of over $800 million in funding owed to rural small businesses and farmers. These cases aren't just one-offs. They're part of this agenda to steal from the American people. Members like Representative DeLauro have tabulated it up and have clocked the theft at over $410 billion of appropriated spending since Donald Trump came back to office. So it is appalling and really impacts all Americans.
Thank you so much. For folks who are listening at home who maybe don't follow things like the appropriations process on a regular basis, why is it so important to talk about this right now during a shutdown? Why is it important to understand what communities have lost and what the stakes are?
Because the stakes are so high. I think, Ezra talked about this a little bit earlier too. I think it's important for us to recall why this moment was picked to fight. And it's important to talk about it because we need to stay clear-eyed and remember that a shutdown is also not good. It has real consequences for workers and programs, but nevertheless, it's the right moment to push back because for months, President Trump and Republicans in Congress have already been shutting down the government little by little, firing workers randomly, withholding funding for cancer research, taking away health care for millions of Americans, as we've discussed. And we've also just seen a massive, terrifying increase in authoritarian behavior generally. The administration has detained people for political positions, threatened judges, attacked the media, come right at universities and nonprofits, arrested a sitting member of Congress for doing oversight of ICE, militarized cities without cause, defied our courts. Of course, as we all know, recently attempted to use its communications agency to derail comedic First Amendment protected speech. This is a moment where we are seeing an unhinged administration that is truly out of control and in an authoritarian spiral. And so this is the moment that we should be having this shutdown showdown, because although a shutdown is not good, what has already been happening is worse. And we know without a shadow of a doubt that Donald Trump will continue to unmake the federal government, whether we're in a shutdown or not.
Catherine, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks so much, Lisa. Finally, I want to turn now to Matt Hayward, the Director of Government Affairs and Senior Strategist at Groundwork Action. Prior to Groundwork, Matt served as Deputy Director of the Office of Congressional and Public Affairs at the National Labor Relations Board during the Biden-Harris administration. Matt, I know Groundwork's been examining public opinion since even before the shutdown started last week. So I want to ask you about what you've learned. How much are Americans paying attention and how are they feeling? And if they're not paying attention, what's the best way to engage them?
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you. So I'm gonna pull up just a couple graphs I have here. So looking at the first chart we have, this gives an idea of how much people are paying attention. People were not paying much attention, and now they really are. We're seeing that just in a couple short weeks, it went from about half of people paying attention, 71% middle of last week, and I actually just saw numbers about an hour ago that it's now up to 82% of Americans saying that they're hearing a lot or some about this government shutdown. So this really is the thing that people are looking at right now. If we look at the next chart, we see next who people are blaming for a shutdown. And it turns out they're actually mostly blaming Republicans right now. Right now, 40% are blaming Republicans, 28% Democrats, 29% would blame both equally. And if you look at the next time series, you see that's held pretty stable over time. And again, we're just seeing numbers come back from our weekend polling that suggest it's still about a 10-point margin that people are blaming Republicans over Democrats for that shutdown that goes across independents as well. So let's look at why people are interpreting this the way they are. And for that, we can look at this next chart about healthcare costs. Turns out people are really concerned about healthcare costs. In fact, 75% of voters are saying that they are very or somewhat concerned. 50% saying very concerned, and this transcends political party. Healthcare is not just a Democratic or a Republican issue. We have 69% of Republicans saying that they are concerned about rising healthcare costs. Now, looking at the other hand, if you look at this table here, at the same time that they care a lot about rising healthcare costs, they don't think that this is where President Trump and Republicans in Congress are focused right now. When we asked how focused do you think they are, 59% of voters said that Trump and Republicans are not focused on lowering healthcare costs for people like you and your family. That included strong majorities of Democrats, also independents by a 32-point margin, said that Trump and Republicans are not focused on lowering healthcare costs. So this then comes down to what people want to happen here. People want the healthcare cuts reversed. By nearly a 20-point margin, voters agree that Democrats should only vote for a government funding bill that reverses Republicans' healthcare cuts. And the way we phrased it, that was even if it risks a government shutdown. And we just asked this question again over the weekend, and they said, even if the shutdown continues, what they want to see is that the healthcare cuts would be reversed. Strong opinion held by Democrats, also a strong proportion of independents. Even in our latest poll, 30% of Republicans were agreeing with the view that healthcare cuts need to be reversed in this shutdown debate. Now, in terms of how we talk about it, I know that people are saying a lot in terms of rhetoric right now. Trump wants to make this about undocumented workers. He wants to make it around gender affirming care. People don't really seem to be buying that. We did a side-by-side test that you can see on this next chart. And we put a Democratic message on healthcare, talking about how the government has been shut down little by little, how people have been kicked off of Medicaid, rural hospitals are closing, and then kind of the key line, Republicans would rather shut down your government than protect your healthcare. We put that head to head against a Republican line talking about how Democrats want to force taxpayers to fund transgender surgeries for minors and give free healthcare to illegal aliens at a monumental cost. When we put these two messages in front of people head to head by an 11-point margin, they picked the Democratic message on healthcare. And that was a 22-point margin among independents. So I just want to leave this in terms of as we're thinking about how to talk right now. The healthcare price hike message is very effective for a number of reasons. It's durable. This is something that is going to continue to be an issue as long as this shutdown fight goes on. It's salient to people's number one priorities. Healthcare is huge in people's lives, and it connects to the number one economic priority that people have right now, which is bringing down the cost of living, making life more affordable. And it's also something that's winnable with a clear goal, restoring the healthcare that's been cut under the Republican agenda. And as you're talking about healthcare with people, I'd encourage you to do a few things. Talk about the impact that people are going to pay more if Congress doesn't act. Make sure that it's urgent. We have to start selecting plans for people using ACA Marketplace on November 1st. That's when open enrollment starts. And then the tangible effect that people are going to pay more, $300 more a month on average, or 75% increase. Actually, I believe new numbers say it'll more than double on average for people using the marketplace. So those are just some pointers you can use as you're engaging on this issue as the fight continues.
Thank you so much, Matt. We only have a few minutes left, and so I have taken a look at a lot of the questions that have come in, going to do my best to consolidate into one big one that I will kick to everybody, which is how worried are you about the president taking the blame for the shutdown out on certain cities and states? How do we protect healthcare and make sure the president can't cut off money for communities the way that he has been?
I mean, I'll take the first piece of this a little bit, Kat. I think they are showing their colors right now in a series of petty and vindictive actions as the shutdown has began, or reaffirming their colors. We already knew them. Doing things like cutting infrastructure projects in Democrat cities, cutting grants, DOE grants for green energy in blue states. Doing petty pop-ups on agency websites that blame the radical left, which we have filed Hatch Act complaints about. They are just again and again showing that they will utilize any crisis to attack in a partisan manner, when really what we should all be focused on is defending all Americans in this moment. So I think I am worried that they will continue to do those kinds of petty vindictive tactics, because that is what they do. That said, that is not a reason not to fight. As I was talking about before, it should stiffen, because if we don't fight now, then when? And then we have already seen what they're willing to do, regardless of being in a shutdown or not. So we have to keep using this moment to try to win what we can.
And if I can just say a quick word about how we talk about this, because it does muddy the waters when there's these threats being made to federal workers, to WIC programs, to taking funds away from cities. This isn't new, and people kind of know it. Like, these threats have been happening all year. And so as we're talking about it, shutting down the government, that's been happening all year. We're in a government shutdown now, but we've been in a government shutdown of some kind for 9 months. So I would talk about it like that. And then also, as we're doing polling on this, we asked particularly about the federal workers question, whether people like agree more that you should stand down because of these threats or stand up so they don't keep happening. By a 10-point margin, people want their leaders to stand up right now because they know that these threats will just keep on continuing if people don't fight back.
Yes. And I would agree with that as well. We need to stand up to tyranny. And, you know, if people that are watching this are wondering how they can do that, number one is, talk to your governor. Talk to your governor about attacking this through the courts. Talk to your legislators about, the Democrats for standing firm. Dog your Republican representatives and senators not to make these cuts. But then we the people have the power. That's the bottom line. And we need to be loud. We need to be vocal. We need to say what we will and will not tolerate. And we need to do it even if we're scared.
Thank you. Ezra, you want to close this out? You want to add on to that?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can beat Julia. She said it all. That's exactly right. We the people have the power. She said it. Be participants in this democracy of ours, y'all. And hopefully you got something out of this call. But the main thing that we hope people are doing is something, whatever that is. Maybe it's calling your senator. Maybe that's showing up at your rep's office. Maybe that's writing an op-ed. Maybe that's organizing an event for No Kings or before that. But get engaged. This is a live fight. We can win this, but we got to play our part. So listen to Julia. You got the power. Just use it.
She did say it all. Thank you, everybody, so much. Matt, Ezra, Lisa, Julia, you made this complex topic much clearer. And thank you to our special guests, Congressman Casar and Congresswoman DeLauro, for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be with us. If you registered for this briefing in advance, you're going to get follow-up materials in the coming days, including a link to this recording and written materials from our panelists that you will not want to miss in order to do all of the actions that folks mentioned. So please keep an eye out for that. And if you're watching on social media, take a moment to register yourself at the link you see on your screen so you don't miss out on those materials. Thank you again, folks. Wishing you a good week ahead, and take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.